Hello, Jim.
Hi, Frank. What was that?
That was the beginning of Braveheart,
Ah, okay.
and tonight we're going to be talking about something that you had brought up around how the hero's journey takes place in each of the archetypes that we're talking about: the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover.
Well, I see that for me, the hero's journey is to integrate the four.
Okay, so you're not talking.
Into the whole man. So when the union is integrated the four, he's what?
Okay, so it's not the. I understood it as you were talking about how the hero's journey helped in the development of the archetype itself. Of the king in us. Does
Yeah.
the archetype go
What?
through a hero's journey
Yeah.
on its own?
Yeah. But they're all the. My understanding of the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover is that the hero is not really an archetype, it's the journey of the archetypes into maturity and
Okay. Could you speak about that a little bit in reference to the king? Specific to the king.
Well, yeah, the king minion over his world. But that isn't power, like not controlling it, but being able to manage his warrior, his lover, and his magician all in balance in a man. So the king is the last one for me to be really achieved or matured, because for the king to come in his fullness, you have to have a mature warrior, a mature lover, and a mature magician. For me, the way I look at it is the integration of head, heart, and body, with the magician representing the head, the lover representing the heart, and the warrior representing the body. And when they're integrated and balanced, that makes it possible for the king to be there.
Mature king.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
The other key piece about the hero's journey, is that at the end of the hero's journey, and I'm getting way ahead, the man who's made that journey is able to integrate himself with his family and tribe, but not as dependent upon it or subject to it, but equal with it.
Got it. Okay. When we had first talked about this idea a few weeks ago, what it kind of spurred in me when I started looking at, because the classic hero's journey, as Campbell wrote about, I think he has 17 stages of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
I started looking at this past week. I started kind of looking at, the movies, myths, and legends in my mind, and saying, okay, how does the individual archetype kind of go through those stages?
Well,
and that's why I was looking. That's why I played Braveheart, because for me, there's a movie where we don't see a lot of the shadow early on, but there is some shadow king. But you could see that really a hero's journey that the young boy just started to embark upon.
Yeah, the very first, the last scene, the last moment, when the uncle says, "I'm your uncle," that's the call to the journey right there. You're on the horse or not.
Right.
That's the very first step in the hero's journey. Do you answer the call or refuse it?
Right, and a lot of this, this past week, I've been doing a little bit more research in preparation for this, and in many cases in the story, there's the immediate, refusal of the call.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so that's almost, I guess if you go too soon, it's not, not really, you got to kind of refuse it.
Well, you've got to be able to hear it clearly, too.
Yeah.
I mean, Braveheart's already primed. He wanted to go with his father before. You know, he wanted to go out to battle already and was told to stay home and take care of the place.
Right. Now, when his uncle comes, if we let that clip roll a little longer, the beginning of the movie, I think he wanted to stay, right, and take care of the farm.
Yeah.
And his uncle says, "No, you got to come with me."
Yeah.
You know, and you're going to teach me how to use the sword. And he says, "No, first we're going to learn how to use this."
Mm-hmm. So first you're going to learn the magician.
Yeah. Before
you learn the sword, the warrior, we're going to learn the magician. Merlin does that with Arthur a lot. Before Arthur ever gets to King Uther Pendragon, Merlin has trained his mind for many years, particularly in the telling of the story in the Once and Future King, which is my favorite maybe my favorite book. But Merlin turns Arthur into an ant and a fish and a bird so he can see how all the creatures think and behave, how they negotiate with life. Before he ever becomes a squire and learns how to pick up a sword, when he pulls the sword out of the stone, he has no idea what he's doing. You know, that's the normal call. But he's been being prepared for it.
Right. Yeah, when I always, the thing that always, for me that rings the loudest with the hero's journey is, at the end of it, after we go through it, it's the bringing the gift back, and they call it like, sharing the elixir, and bringing that gift of the goddess or the god, back into the world, into humanity. And, for me, that's the essence of the king archetype is of service.
That's why Ratatouille is so perfect to me, because at the end of the movie, he's the master of two worlds. He's able to be with his family, with his tribe, but be king of the restaurant and bring them all into the bounty of this, so they're not eating garbage anymore. He lifts up his entire tribe, and he's told not to go on this journey. The father says, just steal food, smell poison for us. That's going to be your fate, is to smell poison in food for the good of the tribe. And when he hears the call, it's when he sees that chef, the TV show with the chef, it's almost like a fairy godmother speaking to him. It's like an angel in a way, saying, take the risk to live fully. And the chef says, no matter how humble, anyone can cook. But what he's saying symbolically is anyone can make this journey if they have the heart and willingness to do it.
I definitely have to go back and watch that movie.
Yeah, it's as good an illustration of the hero's journey compressed as I've seen. It's just, I've taught it several times, using it as a way to show the hero's journey, because it goes through all the stages. It's just superb.
And one of the things that I'm hearing, I'm present to right now is, and we've talked about this months ago we talked about it. Being in the kitchen, and that the symbology with I and John.
Yeah.
Where, the prince has to go to the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
He has to spend that time there to get that humility to be able to come back and really just come into his fullness. You got to go down. And the kitchen is a perfect place. I mean, it's kind of upside down, right? It's upside down because he comes out of the sewer, but he's still in the kitchen.
Well, it's funny. He comes out of the sewer and he climbs to the top of the roof. And he goes out on the roof and he sees the Eiffel Tower. He sees Paris. And that's the goddess. He sees, and then right across there is Chef's restaurant. So he crawls back down to get over there, and he ends up in the kitchen down in the bottom, because that's where the journey begins. And what's so brilliant in this movie is his first day in the kitchen is like something out of Indiana Jones. He's got to avoid the fires from the stoves, the wheels from all the carts, and also stay invisible, because if anybody sees him, they'll kill him. So they have a thing of the sequence of his first day in the kitchen is as exciting as I'm not kidding when I say it's as exciting as Indiana Jones. He deals with more perils in that sequence than almost any hero I've ever seen. I mean, they're coming at him from all sides.
Okay.
So it's fun to watch that, yeah.
So now in Ratatouille, do you see I always look at the archetypes, and we might have I know I'm always looking at the archetypes with the shadows attached. I mean, the shadow is just part and parcel of it. And that's where I see a lot of the evolution of it, where in our early stages of consciousness, we learn the shadow. Right? We're not able to really access. I mean, in some cases, I shouldn't say that, but I think that the shadow is more there in a survival mode, or it shows up more as a survival tool. And
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no,
You're freezing on me, Art. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. So I think we're good. Yeah, so it's just that, how's that emergence out of the shadow or through the shadow and then through the stages? As we go through our hero's journey, as I go through my hero's journey in my life, how does the stages of the hero's journey impact my archetypal development? Like the development of my king.
Well, the hero's journey is the development, among other things, of virtue and of discipline. And one of the things in Ratatouille is he comes from a tribe of thieves. And so he thinks he's been raised that anything you want, you steal.
Okay.
And he has to, that's the shadow. He's trying to steal success. The other thing is later in the movie, his ego gets really big, and his assistant turns on him because he's getting too big for his britches. So he gets very inflated and thinks he doesn't need anybody, that he can do it. That kind of arrogance of youthful power.
And what happens, again, I think I saw that movie when it first came out, and I was seeing all those Disney movies on my first.
2008. Yeah.
What happened? What event happens that brings him down again? Like, it's gotta be something. If his ego is going a little crazy, something's got to take him down.
He's deserted by he's doing all the cooking. He's inside the chef's hat for this guy that's kind of his puppet, who's not very good at anything.
Okay.
And this guy's taking care of him, but he starts taking him for granted. And that guy leaves.
Okay.
And the whole kitchen staff leaves when they see that he's helping a rat. And what happens is the whole rat tribe comes in to help him prepare the meal, which is gross if you don't like rats, because they're all over the kitchen. It's very funny. But what happens then is his friend returns. But what the hero's journey in that also becomes is because Ratatouille can hear things, because he's so small. And the villain who owns the restaurant, the evil king, is hiding evidence that this kind of doofus that's assisting him is the true heir to the restaurant. He was the dead chef's son. And Ratatouille Remy is what his name really is. He finds this letter, and this is the second action sequence. He takes off with this letter, and this chef, who's like the evil prince in Shrek, because he's about 3 feet tall, and he runs after Remy, and Remy's holding this letter, and it's a chase down through the Seine on boats, over bridges, it's a chase like the Bourne. It's a Bourne chase with a mouse with a rat. It's one of the most exhilarating movies that I know.
And
so he has trials by fire. He has many trials by fire, and has to prove his worth, not just to his family, but he has to prove it again to this friend that he's sort of taken for granted in his youthful arrogance.
Okay, so that's where his real transformation comes through. That's where he's got to really change his ways. Now that he has all his tools, he took the call to adventure. He went out. He crossed over into an unknown world. He got all these, crazy things coming at him. He had to learn new tools, and then he got arrogant and brought down again. Little life and death and rebirth.
It's always secret. Nobody can know it's him. And he finally serves this meal, which he's inside the chef's hat. The chef, he works the chef like a puppet.
Okay.
Grabbing the salt, he does it by pulling the guy's hair. And he serves this meal called ratatouille, which is a simple peasant dish, to the most ferocious, evil restaurant critic in Paris. I love his name. It's Anton Ego.
Ego.
And here's what's so glorious, is Anton Ego holds a pen in his hand and a notebook so that he's going to taste and judge. He's not going to experience the food, he's going to judge it. And he takes one taste of the ratatouille and his pen drops to the floor.
Nice.
And he says, I demand to meet the chef, and they go back and he meets Remy the rat. So yeah, it's and when you first see Anton Ego and you go into his study, it looks like a coffin. The way the light's hitting on his desk, the whole length looks like a coffin. And Peter O'Toole plays the voice. It's one of the last things he did.
Okay.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's maybe one of the 10 best movies of this century so far.
So Antoine Ego, he's the kiss of death.
he's totally, yes, he's converted. He writes a rave review.
Okay.
and says that the chef is a rat.
And says that the chef is a rat.
Yeah, and so the restaurant gets closed. So Anton Ego opens a restaurant where he finances it, but Remy's the chef.
Okay.
And up above the restaurant, all the rats are having their own restaurant while Remy's in the kitchen cooking with his buddy.
Great.
So he's in two worlds. He's in the rat world and it's also, if you use cooking as the metaphor, it's the passion of the artist, the passion of the lover. Because once Remy tastes good food, all these sparks go off like he's having a mystical experience early in the movie. And lightning hits and cheese melts on a mushroom. And so he wants to go make other food get hit by lightning because the combination of flavors is so good. It's really, I can't talk about it enough. But I'll stop.
No, this has been great. We're going to have an abbreviated episode.
Okay.
Tonight we're up against the Olympics.
Yes.
As you know.
And the Olympics are next week too, aren't they?
I'm not. I think so. Yes.
Maybe we should hold off till the Olympics are over.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Do we even have anybody listening?
There's no one here, but a lot of people. People have been looking at the recordings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to be regular with our episodes and our message.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously at this point is when we probably open it up and start some dialogue, especially with this subject. So I know you work a lot with women,
mm-hmm.
but if you were to apply this to men,
yeah,
how can a man look at, the hero's journey, specific to the king, because we'll kind of, maybe go through this a little bit more with some other archetypes, and say, well, how can I use it? Like, how can I use it to help me through this stage of my life that I'm not really sure about? I don't know what's going on.
The journey to the king, and I look at this differently a little bit, because I told you about my revelation when I saw that Carolyn's 4 archetypes are the inverse of the king, warrior, magician, lover.
Yes.
So that the child is the inverse of the king. The child has dreams. The king makes the dreams manifest. And the lover knows what is priceless, and the prostitute knows the price of everything. And the warrior has boundaries and takes action, whereas the victim is acted upon and can't set boundaries. And then the magician is the master of perception and illusion, and the saboteur is at the effect of it. So I saw how these work. So for me, the hero's journey is to bring all of those 4 into balance to be a good king. But a king who doesn't have the lover, as we can see on television, might well be a bully or a tyrant. The king who doesn't have the magician may be good-hearted and dumb. Not wise. And the king who doesn't have the warrior doesn't have discipline, doesn't have, my word is law in the universe. If I say this is true, the warrior's code. If I say this, and I'll fall on my sword for my people. I'll tell you a great movie that does this, only it's the hero's journey, but it's with a woman, and that's Erin Brockovich. She becomes queen. She really becomes queen of that place. When she visits with the money to pay the checks to the people whose water's been poisoned, they receive her as if she were Queen Elizabeth.
Sure. And
she even has a knight on a motorcycle. It's kind of cool. But you can look at the hero's journeys from a lot of them. One of the wonderful ones is D'Artagnan in The Three Musketeers, because he's a fool. He wants nobility, and he has no idea what it costs. He sees all the glamour and romance of being a musketeer. And the 3 musketeers who advise him, one is a warrior, one is a lover, and one is a magician. In fact, he's a priest. One of them is the magician in the guise of a priest. And the warrior is kind of big, having a good time. And the lover in it is brokenhearted because he's been betrayed by the woman he loves. But he learns all about wisdom and fighting and love so that he becomes master of all these things. Or I don't like to say master, but able to manage and integrate all of them and know what to pull up. Do I pull up the magician now? Does the king use the magician in this case? Like the diplomat? Does he use the warrior like force, or does he use the lover? With being beneficent and bountiful. For the king, the lover is largely love of his people, love of the land and love of the people. And from that love comes the nurturing of them.
Okay.
So that's how they all work together for me. And I would, if I could separate them into quarters, I would, but I haven't done it that way for so long. It's really hard for me. I feel like I'm doing an episode of NCIS where we're going to cut open a corpse.
Yeah, well, that's the.
I just don't know how to see it that way.
Yeah, for me, it's a very helpful process. For myself too. When I first started teaching the archetypes, after we went through CMed with you and Carolyn, I like the idea of just being able to hone in and look at one archetype and become a master of it. And I think you used the right word, because from my martial arts background, I know what, being a master is not, it's realizing your flaws as well. It's knowing your limitations and not being full of ego. And then knowing how to use it. Mm-hmm. And one of the best ways to do that is learn it in pieces and really learn about the child, the victim, where it is in my life, learn about the king, the warrior, magician, lover. And then it just, over the last 4 years or so in teaching, I was like, even though I knew it had to blend, and I knew it did blend, it's like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense, because they can't operate independently.
No, they can't.
They can't. I mean, they can't, they don't, they won't. They play together. And to understand it and to be able to create the language for a novice, right, for someone new that's new to archetypes, or maybe heard of it, or just kind of integrating into their life, hopefully a lot of the men that we'll be talking to, you have to break it down into its pieces. To play chess, you got to learn, what the rook can do, what the queen can do, what the bishops can do, what the knights can do. You have to learn what the pieces can do individually, but that's what I know about chess, and I don't know how to play chess, right?
But I'll tell you, when you say novices, 2 weeks ago, or 3 now, I was at the seminary with novices, well, first or second year seminarians, and they are resistant to anything psychological, my God. But here's how the archetypes work. The most resistant one says, Father, I don't get all this psychological archetypal stuff. I said, you just did my job for me, because I'm not a priest. But I have a very strong priest archetype. I said it, I've dealt with it my whole life. People just assume I'm a priest, or I've been a priest. But I said, just call me Jim, I'm not a priest. And so but the movie I showed for them was about a priest. And in this, he's got the king, the warrior, the magician, the lover. He's the pastor of this small church in an Irish village. And all he cares about is the good of the people, the good of his realm. He's completely devoted to it. And to do that, he has to pull up the warrior, he has to pull up the magician, and he has to pull up the lover in different guises. It's with different people. In ministering to different ones, he uses the different archetypes, but they're all in the service of the king. They're all in the service of his parish. So I'd say get it, but you can get it on Blu-ray, I think, but I don't think it's even available on DVD. It's a great, among other things, because the love is expressed in his love for the people. And also the priest was married and his wife died, and he becomes a priest, and he has a daughter, an adult daughter. And so you see his tenderness with her, and his tenderness with one of the little boys in the parish, and his compassion to the suffering of the people. And they are a mess. And they're blaming him. He stops to talk to a little girl walking on the road, and the father drives by with a car and says, I told you not to talk to priests, because of all the sex scandals and all that. So he gets just spat upon, really. And he's virtuous. So he's trying to remain the good king and not abdicate. And at one point, he decides to flee, and then realizes he can't because he's the king. It's really good.
Got it. And what was the name of that movie again?
Calvary.
Calvary.
Like Jesus on Mount Calvary.
Yes.
Great. Yeah.
That's 2 more on my list, Ratatouille and Calvary.
Well, if you've got kids, you probably have Ratatouille.
Like I said, my older kids, yes, I think we had it, but it's probably all scratched and gone by now. We'll get.
I'll tell you, to me, it's more heroic than The Revenant, or this guy is just revenge for the whole thing. God, I hated that movie. But it's heroic. It's heroic. What makes it so wonderful is it creates a grand adventure like Braveheart, like Indiana Jones, like Star Wars, all in the framework, because Remy is as heroic as any of them.
Yeah.
In pursuit of his dream, in pursuit of his call.
Yeah.
And it breaks it down into less than 90 minutes, and I always try to find short movies, because I teach at night when people are tired. But that movie just, I used it to teach the hero's journey. And the way we used it actually is, here's the thing: the hero's journey is a journey from a fated life to a destined life. So when Carolyn was talking about fate and destiny, the fated life is the unexamined tribal life. To have a destiny, you have to break free of that. And when the young man or young woman wants to do that, everybody in the tribe says, if you cross that boundary, you'll be eaten by crocodiles. And if you make it past the crocodiles, the poison monkeys will get you. Yes, there is a green emerald at the top of that mountain, but the monkeys will eat you. And so the kid says, I want to go. And they tie him to the bed. And he sneaks out one night. And, bears are out there, beyond here danger lies. And it does. And he gets wounded. And if he comes back with the emerald or an elixir, it helps everybody. But when he goes on that journey, they give him up for dead. He's dead to them.
Right.
And he's betrayed the family because he was supposed to take care of them.
Yeah. And, that's the other thing, as you talk, I remember specifically about, going through this at CMed, with Carolyn and talking about how many of us are on the unconscious road, unconscious hero's journey. We don't know we're going through it, but, something has said, I don't know, you get this feeling, a call to adventure. There's got to be more out there. And maybe, your family disowns you in some way or gets mad at you. You have a fight with your father, you have a fight with your mother, you have a fight with a brother, something, and you leave. You go off with this pissed off attitude at them, the tribe. Mm-hmm. And you kind of go out and make your own way. That's what it's called in the world, right? You got to go make your own way in the world, but you're going through the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And it's inside of that, do you keep the ego on when the chef when the human chef leaves, like in Ratatouille, or do you kind of transform? And there's so many people that don't transform, that kind of stay in that illusion of the real world and don't go through it and really learn, and kind of get stuck in a loop, I think.
I got a questionnaire from one of my high school classmates. He sent it out to all the classmates. And I had my 50th reunion, God, a while ago now. But, like 8 years. But anyway, he sent out this thing called, Are You Living in the Bubble? And a good many of my classmates are living in the bubble because they're living in the same kind of culture they always lived in as kids. Whereas I've lived in integrated mixed race neighborhoods since I left Denver, with a 3-year exception when I had a house in the hills, and I hated it. It was isolated from everybody. But there was no room for me in the bubble. I had to get out of it. The bubble as it was in 1959 to 63, there was no room for somebody like me. So I wrote them a brief description of what my life had been. And it really had this, one guy wrote me back, and what was the word he said? But it was like blessed, because they all went on kind of a straight road, and my road's been like a loop-the-loop to get to where I am. And it's been a real journey, and I became aware of that fairly early on. The discovery of who I am and where do I get my strengths, if what my strengths are don't seem like strengths to the tribe.
Got it.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of people here. I want to open it up to see if they have any questions or comments. Hello, Mr. Ellis. Hello, Mr. Blau. Hello, Mr. Cusick. And hello, Mr. Arthur. So you, man, if you want, you're able to, take yourself off mute, or I can take you off mute and ask the question to me and Jim, what we've been talking about here, the hero's journey specific to the king archetype, but it's really hard for me and Jim at this point, looking at the archetypes, to separate one from another. They interact with each other. And I think that's the mastery of it, to see, where my king is going into the shadow and may need a little strong magician, or where my, lover is taking over and I'm getting a little complacent, and the warrior's got to kick in to kind of balance it out, and how they all play together. Do I need to be a lover king, or do I need to be more of a warrior king? Does my magician be more an action, like a Gandalf, and take up the sword, or does he, is it a fair, more of a fairy and work behind the scenes, like maybe the Wizard of Oz? Definitely, that's on the shadow side until he comes out at the end. But the Wizard of Oz, the actual wizard, would be a lover magician. More than a warrior magician. So that's that's that wheel that we show sometimes. That's how I like to look at the archetypes, how they interact. But today's been great, talking a little bit more about the hero's journey. So if anyone's out there that wants to chime in, we're going to kind of keep it shorter tonight, unless this conversation gets lively, because we realize we're up against the Olympics, and I know some people might want to get back to it. It's a once every 4 years event. So, I'll go ahead and take some people off of mute. I'm going to take Jim Ellis off of mute. Hello, Jim Ellis. Is he with us? Maybe he's not with us anymore. Jim likes to call in, so he might be on mute. Hello, Mr. Blau. How are you tonight?
I'm all right. Came in a little late.
Okay, well, thanks for showing. Appreciate it.
Well, I was here at 6, but there was nothing.
Yeah, I might have a little technical difficulty earlier. I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah.
So if no one's got any questions or comments, we're just going to wrap it up. And everyone will be able to see what's available on the someone just said in the beginning of the first few minutes there was nothing on the screen. I don't know exactly what happened there, but if you miss something, I'll have the recording up. Maybe you can catch the front of it. It was a good conversation. Me and Jim were having a great conversation around the hero's journey specific to the king archetype and all the archetypes, and how they it helps the king has to have all the other three archetypes: the king, the magician, the warrior, and the lover, to be in full expression of itself. And how using the hero's journey, as described by Joseph Campbell, and the stages of the hero's journey, how that helps uncover and put the archetypes through its trials and tribulations to fully express itself. I guess.
I think we're good for tonight, Frank.
Yeah, me too. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you next week. Or, look out. We may put out an email to see, if we're up against the Olympics again next week. We may skip a week and see you the week after that. Okay. Good night, all.
Thanks, guys.
Go watch Ratatouille.
Yes.